This is the Sony ZV-E10 II, and at first I didn't have much interest in covering this camera, but when I learned that it has the same sensor as a camera I use quite often, the FX30, but was $800 cheaper, I felt it was worth a closer look. Let's get undone.
Gerald Undone. He's crazy.
What's happening, everybody? I'm Gerald Undone, and this is not a sandwich. For disclosure, Sony did lend me this camera to make this review. I don't get to keep it. I wasn't paid. I'm not involved with the press trip that coincided with this camera's launch, and Sony does not get to see this video before I post it. This video does have an actual sponsor though, and that's Storyblocks. So this is the third time we've seen this sensor. First the FX30, then the A6700, and now here. I'm going to be drawing more comparisons to the FX30 though, because this new camera is also very video focused, where the A6700 is more photography oriented. But this also means we can skip over the majority of the review because this sensor has already been tested thoroughly. You're getting the same 15 total stops of dynamic range with a medium score of 11.3 when granting a signal noise ratio of 2, and the same rolling shutter performance with a readout time of 16 milliseconds. And compared to the FX30, there's not much to really boast about on this camera. It's basically just an FX30 that overheats sooner, but for $800 less. And we'll of course get into that overheating in a moment, but I think it's more important to stress how much of an improvement this is if you're coming from the original ZV-E10. First off, you're getting the new menu system and interface, which most importantly grants 10-bit recording in video instead of the 8-bit found on the previous version. You can also record all the way up to 4K 60, oversampled from 5.6K, while leveraging a much better autofocus system. It has all the latest bells and whistles like real-time recognition AF, focus breathing compensation, S-Cinetone, improved stabilization, and the ability to import user lights. It even has a new vertical information display when you rotate the camera, which is pretty handy for shooting content in that orientation. And just like the FX30, it's using the FZ100 battery instead of the smaller, older battery found on the Mark I, which means not only are you getting a lot more battery life, but your batteries are interchangeable with the FX3, FX30, and the flagship full-frame cameras. The only thing it's really missing is the 4K 120 mode from the FX30, but to be honest, that wasn't exactly a strength on that camera anyway. It had a massive added crop and thus suffered from reduced image quality and increased noise. You can also live stream with this camera in a few different ways. The HDMI port will put out a clean 4K signal, but sadly that port is the measly micro Type D connector. You can also use the built-in network streaming and USB streaming options. The USB method uses the USB-C UVC protocol, which allows up to 4K 30, but you'll likely experience overheating on anything above 1080p. The longest I could stream over USB in 4K 30 in ideal conditions was 58 minutes before it overheated. So for 4K streaming, I recommend using the HDMI port out to a capture card. Now that overheating aspect is the one that I tested most thoroughly on this camera, because that's where you'll find the biggest disparity between this and the FX30, which has a built-in fan. Well, that and the vlog features on this new camera like the product showcase mode, the quick defocus button for shallow depth of field, the timer options, and the cinematic vlog mode. And it also has the improved 3-capsule built-in mic inherited from the full-frame ZV-E1, which is a step up compared to the Mark I of this camera. So how about this? Before we go full tilt on the overheating results, I'll turn on all the vlog stuff and record myself telling you about the sponsor of today's video, Storyblocks, using the built-in mic and this new 16-50 kit lens that you can get with the camera for just $100 more. It's actually a pretty good buy for $100. I probably wouldn't buy this separately, but as a kit lens, it's not too bad. It's improved over the original one, and it has stabilization. It's decent. If you're not familiar, Storyblocks is a stock media platform that offers unlimited downloads of diverse and high-quality content for one predictable subscription cost. No more expensive pay-per-click pricing. Just pick a plan, pay that fee, and that's it. And you'll enjoy a library of over 1 million HD and 4K video files, images, and motion graphics templates. And speaking of those graphics, Storyblocks has expanded the library beyond just Premiere Pro and After Effects, and now includes customizable DaVinci Resolve templates for motion graphics and animated sequences, an essential tool for creating professional-looking videos at scale. And it's always easy to find what you're looking for in Storyblocks because the platform is very intuitive, and new content is commissioned frequently to ensure you'll have fresh assets to satisfy your project. So to get started with unlimited stock media downloads at one set price, head to storyblocks.com/undone or click the link in the description. Now, of course, one other difference between this camera and the FX30 that I just considered as I was doing the clip I just recorded is that this camera only has one SD card slot, where the FX30 has that combo dual bay. So redundant recording will not be possible on this camera unless you also record out to HDMI, where it's a lot easier to do on the FX30. Okay, regarding overheating. First, some disclaimers. I've made videos in the past suggesting that overheating results should be taken with a grain of salt, as there are a lot of variables that can have substantial impacts on your runtimes. All of my tests were done with the camera on a tripod, with the screen open, and with the heat threshold set to high in the menu. I had autofocus, stabilization, and lens corrections turned on, and I had it actively tracking a subject throughout the duration. All that was changing was the camera's position relative to the sun and the ambient temperature. I also let the camera acclimate to each environment before starting a test and allowed sufficient cooling time between tests. So as you can see here, this is my table for overheating on the ZV-E10 II. And we're just gonna work our way down from top to bottom, left to right. So the first line you're gonna see is for 22C environment, which is 71 Fahrenheit. This is indoor studio, this is down here. This is an ideal condition. Normally it's like 21 to 22C with air conditioning. It stays consistent at the temperature. And in 4K 24, we got a result of 145 minutes, and the cause was the battery died. So that is sort of your maximum runtime, no overheating, just how long does the battery last. And it's quite good, actually. 145 minutes is a good result for this camera. The new, bigger battery is playing a difference here, and I would have no complaints if that was all there was to this story. But if we move down to 23C in direct sun, there was a light breeze, 4K 24, only 73 minutes before it overheated. So that'll let you know that if you have this camera in direct sunlight, it might cut your runtime in half. But then moving on to 25.5C, almost 26C, in the shade, still outdoors, still that nice breeze, but then we were able to go for, and still 4K 24, we were able to go for 141 minutes before the battery died. So again, we're still getting that 2 hour and 20 minute time frame, and no issues, even up to 26C, as long as it's in the shade and there's a bit of a breeze. However, when I moved it indoor into my garage, which was kind of stuffy, there was no airflow, it wasn't in direct sunlight, but it was just in a stuffy, hot room, at 28C, or 82 Fahrenheit, at 4K 24, we only got 106 minutes before it overheated. Still not a terrible result, but as the garage warmed up throughout the day, when I did the test again at 31C, which is 88 Fahrenheit, we only got 53 minutes. So that extra 3 degrees ambient can cut your runtime in half. Now you're down to 53 minutes, but still potentially usable depending on how long you need your camera to run for. However, if we take that same situation and put it out in direct sun in a 31C environment there was little to no breeze at this point, it dropped drastically down to 22 minutes of runtime at 4K 24 before it overheated. And then the last test I was able to do, because this is sort of as hot as it is in my environment, was 33C outdoor in shade with a little bit of a breeze, and we got 38 minutes. So that should kind of show you direct sun is probably the biggest impact. Having a little bit of a breeze does help. And even with all those things together though, if you're up above 30C, your runtime is going to be cut down below an hour almost certainly. I guess that means that if you do need to shoot outdoors, putting it under an umbrella so you have shade and even putting a little pocket fan on to give it some air movement will increase your runtime. But I would probably consider this camera more of a 20-something Celsius camera and not really a 30-something Celsius camera. And then I also did some tests in 4K 60. Down here again, ideal studio scenario in 22C at 4K 60, only 24 minutes. I was surprised by this. That's quite low. I was expecting to get a better result from that. And it only got worse from there, obviously. And the 25.5C outside in the shade with the light breeze test, 15 minutes, and then it overheated. And then lastly, 26C outdoors, direct sun, light breeze. I barely got over 10 minutes. So I definitely wouldn't consider this a 4K 60 camera, especially if you like to shoot your A-roll at 4K 60, I would not recommend that. Just leave it to short, slow motion clips. And the same is kind of true for the 4K 24 if you're shooting outdoors in hot environments, or even indoors in hot, stuffy environments. You're going to want to keep your A-roll requirements to shorter durations. However, if you are in an indoor climate-controlled space like the one I'm in, you can run the battery down. You can record for 2 hours and 20 minutes without issue. But I don't want to just say that, and so people go out and buy a camera thinking they're going to run it for 2 hours and 20 minutes, because as you saw, even if you increase your ambient by 3 degrees, your performance is going to go down drastically. And after all that testing, I still don't know what to think. It's pretty clear that the FX30 is the better camera all the way around, or at least the more reliable camera. But $800 less for the ZV-E10 Mark II is a savings of 45%. And when you're on a budget, there's a huge difference between $1,000 for this camera and $1,800 for the FX30. So I guess the simple way of looking at it is this. If you need long record times and you aren't always recording in a cool climate-controlled studio, you're going to have to pay the extra money and get the FX30. If, however, you can keep your clips reasonably short and none of the numbers on my overheating table concern you, then the ZV-E10 Mark II is going to do everything the FX30 can do, but at a much cheaper price and provide a substantial upgrade over the Mark I version. All right, I'm done.